Ayşe Belgin-Henry studied architecture, and she also studied history of architecture. And you studied in Istanbul Technical University, right? Yes. And after that, University of Illinois in Robert Osterhouten helped her for her doctoral studies. And her topic, as I mentioned in yesterday's meeting, she is studying on monasteries, St. Simeon Monastery, for example. That is the subject of her doctoral study. And from Hatay, she cannot leave Hatay. In fact, she joined excavations in a lot of places, but still she came back to her home. And at Castle, she has been working since, I think, 3-4 years. I will say that. In fact, we started in 2018, but we couldn't work after that at all. So you started in 2018. Yes, let's say. This study started in 2018, and she is an associate professor at Bilkent University, and she has a lot of contribution to this event. Welcome, Ayşe. Thank you.
Hoş buldum diyorum. Filiz Hocam, size de çok teşekkür ederim davet için. Ben şu anda duyuyorum yalnız tercümeyi.
Thank you very much to Professor Scott and Filiz.
Yaptım.
Yaptınız mı? Peki.
Yaptım. Niye olmadığını anlamıyorum. İlk onu yaptım, sonra
So I pushed the button German and then I shared my presentation.
Teşekkür ederim.
Pardon, başlamadan önce Ayşe.
Before we start, Ayşe, can you magnify your window?
Nereden açılıyor? Ha, tamam. Sağ olun.
Çok teşekkür ederim.
Okay, thank you very much. Welcome to me again. Well, Arzanım, thank you very much for all your efforts. I'll talk about Kozkalesi and the ongoing work at Kozkalesi very briefly today. Before I sent the abstract, I think I reminded people that there will be further work going on. Unfortunately, there have been some events, negative events accompanying the project, my health problems, and then COVID-19 outbreak. That's why I couldn't make progress. Hopefully, there won't be any UFO attack next year, and we'll start this year. Well, someone will deal with ceramics. Leila is a conservation specialist, and another colleague will join us this year. Well, I talk about the goal of the project, the methodology, and the problematic which we faced. Talk about the goal and the construct of the project, the results and data. I'll talk about question definitions and the definition of the problematic. I will introduce the site very briefly. I'll talk about the previous works and how the Kozkalesi project came about, its main methodology and the construct, and talk about how we define the site and the works that have been going on. Kozkalesi is 18 kilometers far away from Antakya. Well, it is on the Crusader plateau, which is the south of the city and at the southwest-northeast axis. The first studies were published by Van Berchem and Fatio toward the end of 19th century. They established a connection between historical chronicles, and they referred to Arabic, French, Latin chronicles and records. The city's name was Crusader, Cursarium, and they associated it with the Principality of Antioch. After this date, other researchers followed. except for the detailed description of Sinclair, the most comprehensive study was carried out a decade ago by Biller and Rath. While a relatively adjusted and corrected layout and a sketch cross-section was included in this publication. In addition, in 2011, A&B Architecture Office completed a conservation project under the leadership of Umut Bilgic, and due to the quality of the reliefs and the survey, it is quite valuable. This is the layout. It is based on their drawings, actually. Well, the Antioch and the surroundings, they're discussed in various records, but what needs to be discussed in parallel to the colorful history of the Middle Age, of primary resources, archaeological practice has remained very few. Kinetöyük excavations are important, and Asa Eger archives are benefited from to make a synthesis, and field surveys have been carried out recently. We need to focus at the critical centers and look at it from different perspectives to interpret it in a new way, and to establish a new benchmark or reference prior, like Bakra's Castle, Kozkalesi project emerged to fulfill this goal, especially in the 12th and 13th century. Not later than the 13th century, maybe even before that, but not later than the 13th century. Two important features of this site were mentioned. There was a residence of a bishop in the castle, and how its connections with the rural part and Antioch were, and rural urban relationships were established, was investigated. The second feature is the series of wall systems at the north, and due to its proximity to Antioch, it became an important point of defense. Previous studies on Kozkalesi mentioned that Kozkalesi is far away from the main roads. Adrian Boas, in one of his publications, said that Kozkalesi has an isolated position and is similar to Montfort. Montfort has been constructed in an isolated place, and the regional context of Kozkalesi is quite different from that. We have a very dense rural settlement which crosses Daphne and extends to Antioch in Kozkalesi. We know this from Hatice Pamir's field surveys. So we have to look at the close surroundings of Kozkalesi to make inferences. We have to know the landscape and then in 12th century, any other settlements that it is related to, water sources, etc. Whether or not there are other remains, we have to investigate it very diligently. And one of the foremost problematics of the project is how Kozkalesi need to be evaluated within the regional context because of lack of data. Unfortunately, I can't elaborate on it further. Once we have collected the material and once we carry out these tests and assess those in the center in Lyon, we will hopefully have a breakthrough in this matter. As Yona Waxman mentioned, we have to investigate a material in Kozkale within the scope of production consumption context. Hopefully we'll take the first steps. We talked to Yona and Asil about it, and hopefully we'll start discussing some life practices. Let's go back to the slide. Kozkalesi is covering, encompassing the north, east, and west of the area. It dominates the region, which is a valley or a plain. There's a bridge which is to the west of Kozkalesi, probably constructed the same dates as the castle, and follows the lines of the topography, and it draws zigzag lines, climbs up the western slope and extends toward Kozkale. The southern part, which opens up to the plain, is not protected. That's why different towers have been built there, which have different layouts and sizes in later periods. Here you see the remains of the keep, and there are stables, bathhouses in different places to the east, and they extend from the east to the north. Before going to the detail, I'll talk about some historic data which were determined by Berham, outlined by Berham. But I think the primary sources or chronicles need to be evaluated. Syriac and Arabic sources need to be evaluated. We talked to Joshua Magla last year, and he will carry out a parallel research project to ours. He will review the primary chronicles or resources pertaining to this region along Kozkalesi. Arab chronicles, it is defined as El-Kuseyr seized by the king of Jerusalem, Fulko, in 1134. In these chronicles, there is no information as the property of El-Kuseyr, but written sources show that it was property of the Latin Church of the Antioch Principality, and Bishop Emery of Liges had disagreement with the prince and settled down here. In 1188, Selahattin came to Antioch, but did not seize Kozkalesi. 1256 is an important date because the papacy collected money from the richest leaders in Antioch and reinforced the walls. The written sources say that the Mamluks did not seize the castle in 1268 after the fall of Antioch, and Barbarossa gave the castle to Guillaume and the Latin bishop. So there's good relations between those. However, in 1275, Kozkalesi was again conquered by the Mamluk forces for 7 months. After that, there are no written sources on Kuseyir, Kursat, or Kursarium, or Kozkalesi. We have to investigate Ottoman archives, probably. Instead of trying to date the site in bits and pieces, we have to look at the general characteristics and the chronology, and starting at the point it was abandoned, going back from that period. The extant towers of Kozkalesi are important elements, architectural elements, but they were significantly demolished. There are very few places that can be really defined, and they are underground, most of them underground. In the keep, you can see that the main sites, they are placed on top of the existing structure with a vault system. There was a detail that we saw in 2018, which points toward the fact that maybe Kozkalesi was not actively used after it was seized by the Mamluks in 1275. And let me start there. In the southwest, there's a site which we call T3, a hexagonal tower, pentagonal tower, and there's a tower which surrounds it, which is in the form of T, but it was not built earlier than that. If it were built earlier, the vaults of the external tower should have lean against the facade of the 3T tower, but there's no such trace. And this tower is quite high, but it's like an observation post isolated from the surrounding structures, and there's an infill inside, but the deformed tower which surrounds it belongs probably to the 13th century, and the period in which T3 was constructed, it was a ruin. Maybe T3, well, the remains were used to support the construction of T3 tower. We know that the Mamluks systematically destroyed structures that they were no longer using. They didn't leave stone on top of stone. And as we saw the tower, I realized that Mamluks maybe left it unusable, and maybe the other tower was built to watch the road in the later days. This masonry and workmanship is similar to the masonry of the 13th century, so there is no legal time gap in between the building of those towers. And the masons, they don't change in such a short period of time, so maybe the same masons build it. We will study the materials and compare it with historical records, and we'll do the 3D modeling and the extant towers, and examine the extant towers and how they were damaged, etc. Will all be analyzed. In 2018, to the west of the castle, important details were discovered alongside the road. One of these finds is regarding the construction of the site. Along the road, close to the entrance, there are quarries. And we should study these quarries and associate those with the castle. The second group is the pathway as of the bridge has been checked at certain points. So there are checkpoints along the road starting at the bridge. And there are some engravings, rock engravings, which point to this fact. So access to the castle was checked, and it has also a ritual aspect, accessing the castle. How Kozkalesi has been experienced is important. So we have to investigate the road accessing the castle and the entrance. And then the third one, the gate, the entrance, the defense of the entrance. To make entrance easier, there was an infill, so it's not easily visible. These staircases, they are from contemporary times. Close to the main portal, the main portal was defended from the outside as well. So at the left arm of this road, side of this road, here, there's a terrace wall and a which was turned into a platform. Middle of the platform, there's a standalone tower structure and a remains of a staircase. And this platform, before reaching the portal, it is discontinued, and the terrace wall comes to an end. So this has been filled, the gap has been filled today. Probably there was a bridge system to cross this part, and I've shown it in blue. We have to examine the system in all its details. The bridge goes to an intake tower to which the main portal opens, and once you enter through the main portal, there's a corridor and there's one more gate. In the south of the passage corridor, there's a high-rise structure. There's a vault system, 8 meters above the ground level. There was a platform. So there are vaults and a platform. And the main site was placed or situated on this platform, probably. But there are very few remains, so it's too early to comment. on those, but the vault system beneath has to be examined first, maybe to come up with some conclusions or results. But then, because of the wall and thick wall, we can say it's just a high-rise structure. On the other hand, the site was placed on a platform, and the entrance to this was from the south. So once you enter the site, so you cross this part, and then the level goes up, and then you reach the platform, and above. This is to ensure a defense advantage, probably, or provide a defense function. Well, we can't immediately associate the remains with written sources, but we can see that defense elements have been increased in the 13th century, and we can see those traces. Well, in the southwest, there's T4, in the south, there's T7, so deformed towers, which can be dated to the 13th century because of the architectural features. So towers with this layout were on the rise in the 13th century. There are Gothic details. Looking at the pointed vaults, we can make this difference. Spolia was not used at the external walls. It was constructed in a single stage. You can see it by looking at T4, and we have to look at the connection between these walls and the interior to be able to determine the stages. The southern slope was open, but it was protected with a dry ditch system constructed in the 13th century, which was adapted to protect from assaults coming from the south. One of the most important unknowns of this castle is whether or not there are other gates than the main portal or the main gate. The southern slope, the area, there's a controlled area, maybe opening up to the inside of the castle, or maybe there may be some other gates leading to the castle on the sides. So we have carried out a rough analysis on the spread or expansion of the castle. The main sites are in the western part of the city of the castle, this area. Can you see the western area? So the main sites structures were there. And this is the reason why it was called El Koseir in written sources. This is the area of first settlement. The eastern border of this side, I don't know if it extends to T8. There's a wall, that's why I drew a line. Maybe this continued earlier than that, but it ends there. I know for sure that in the last stage, the characteristics of settlement changes as of T9 tower, which is in rectangular shape. As you can see from the layout of T9 tower, the tower is controlling the inside of the castle, not the outside walls. So, as of this point, the topography follows the external walls. First extends to the east and then to the north, so there's a street in both directions. To the east of the street, we see stables, bathhouses, and cisterns, so one next to the other. No, to the west and north of the street, there is a wide area which served for settlement purposes. We have some rock or stone engravings. We didn't find any other traces of settlement yet, but we haven't carried out a detailed research there. It's not an easy to read structure, Kozkalesi. We just embarked on this project. Actually, I miss going to the library, but hopefully in the coming years, we will determine its characteristic features and its regional context, and we'll have more clear results on all of these connections. And that was a good beginning to the project. Thank you very much for your patience.